Have you ever suffered for doing the right thing? I mean, here it is. You're trying to be a good person. You're trying to be a Christian. You're trying to follow Jesus. And you do what's right. And you're hated for it, or you're talked about, or even worse, maybe you've lost a job or you've lost some friends because you've taken a stance. You've paid a very high price, and there is some suffering involved. A few years ago, there was a football player named Colin Kaepernick. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of him. And at first, Colin Kaepernick kneeled during the national anthem as he had asked one of his servicemen friends, who was a football player as well, what's the best way to protest? What's a peaceful way to protest what was going on with black men being killed or hurt or harmed by police or bad police? And so his friend told him, hey, kneel during the national anthem. And so that's what Colin Kaepernick did. Well, he paid a steep price for doing what he thought was right. And since that time, even though he led his team to a Super Bowl, Colin Kaepernick has not been able to play professional football since, because of the stance he took for protesting police brutality and kneeling during the national anthem. Well, as we saw a few years later with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and others, what Colin Kaepernick was kneeling for was actually right. But he still paid a steep price. And he has suffered something he loves to do. He has not been able to do for a number of years. Our theme text for today goes like this. Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom the master has put in charge of the servants in his household to give them their food at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns. Our lesson this week is really, how do we understand suffering? How do we respond as Christians? And because we follow Jesus, because we follow his word, the Bible does say that we will suffer sometimes. But whatever God has given us to do, and maybe you haven't figured it out yet, but that will come in time. But whatever God has put on your heart, whatever passion that God has instilled in you to follow, it might bring about persecution. But let me just share this. The reward will be so much greater than the suffering price that we have to pay down here. Listen, there's 3 things that I want you to get from this lesson. Number 1, understand why the early Christians were willing to face death for their faith. Number 2, sense the realness of God. Number 3, choose to pursue a real and growing relationship with God.